right, thank you so much for staying with Daybreak. The discussion starts right now. Let me introduce my all-female panelists again one more time, starting from the upper deck. Mercy Nyabwala, governance strategist. Thank you so much for making time. Lucy Mworia is here. She's the CEO, founder, Kenya Pro Aging Organization. Asante sana for making time. Nora Bosibori, a policy analyst, is with us. Thank you very much for making time. Starting from my right on the lower deck, Marcelina Cherubia, Youth for Change advocate. Asante sana for making time. Irene Otto, advocate of the High Court. Thank you very much for making time. And Gashui Karioki, director of Stawi KE and also an advocate of the High Court. Asante sana for making time.
Thank you.
The simple conversation that I want us to have today is that on Wednesday, we mark the World International Day for the Girl Child. And I'll start with you, Marcy.
Yeah.
What do you see as the gaps when it comes to leveling the playing field for the girl child this far we've come?
I think if we look at it from a Kenyan perspective, we have a lot of challenges in terms of even education, women inclusion in politics and in leadership positions. Because when we look at the girl child, we just don't look at, teenagers. We are looking at even those who are above the teenage bracket. So within the teenage group, we have, the HIV prevalence that is really a menace in Kenya, and this is a menace that we've tried to fight through various, activities and also through the mainstream, through schools and there's a lot of programs that are going on, even in the CBC, right now it is included in the curriculum. So there is the HIV prevalence among the teenagers. We have early teenage pregnancies and also marriages. That is still a common, threat in our institutions and also in schools. So you find, like say in the northeastern part, there are a lot of early pregnancies and teenage pregnancies and early marriages that are still going on. In as much as the government has come up with structures and institutions to fight this, the cultural, the culture that we have in those particular areas have endangered even school-going pupils. And these are some of the things and challenges that we are going through at the moment.
So I'd like to hear what the possible solutions are, but let me bring in Mworia first. Mworia, what do you see as the gaps? So what are the challenges you're seeing?
Thank you, Trevor. Like she just said, I would just echo what she has said. Most of it, like in areas where I come from myself, in the northern part of Kenya, is cultural practices. Those are huge. And it's like there's nothing happening. It's okay for girls to be married when they are young. It's okay for FGM to be practiced, although the laws are there. She talks about the laws, but they're not being. There's a difference between having the laws and the implementation. You find even people living even in towns take their daughters in the rural areas for FGM to be done, even when they're educated, even the educated ones. So that means the biggest stumbling block is cultural practices. And the marrying them of the FGM. Also, there's the inequality of even enrollment in school. Less girls are enrolled because of their gender roles. They are like, you girls, you can stay home, your brother can go to school, or why do you have to go to school anyway? The stigma, the discouragement. You'll be married off anyway, so why would you even go to school? At the end of the day, you end up being in the kitchen. So that culture is actually huge, despite how many laws we're going to make. I think we need an overall changing of the attitude towards the way people think the girl child. And it continues. That's why the abuse is there, violence against them, until even when they are older women. That's why when you said I'm for older, I'm pro-aging. So even older women, it's not when they are just girls. It continues with the same attitude. It's okay to be abused. After all, you are a woman. You have no voice. Why would you raise your voice? So it continues, and the violence continues, and our cultural practice.
Do you consider the demographic of the aging under more threat than the younger ones, because they seem to be the ones who are more accommodative to certain archaic cultural practices, or is it the younger people? Because you just mentioned that it's not even a matter of education. There are those who are educated, but they still stick to the backward cultural practices. So the aging community, are they more susceptible to this, or is it the younger people?
Actually, the more they're older, they are more successful, because like I said, the violence continues, and a lot of them actually are not educated. That's why you have a smaller bracket of women who were able to go to school. Those who are over 60 now, most of them, like maybe 20% went to school. And so they're the ones who are easier to stick to those practices because they have nothing else they can do. They don't have jobs, and most women actually, especially in the rural areas, they depend on men. They depend. That's why marriage is like, so it has to be, you have to be married for someone to take care of you. So yeah, the older women actually more, and they live even more. More women, older women live longer, and the more you stay longer, the more now problems comes up. They get abused. You find them being raped at their older ages. We have seen such cases. Neglection, they are neglected. Men go ahead and marry younger women and ignore them. So even their children are neglecting them. So there are more problems as they grow older.
Okay.
Yeah.
Bosibori, what do you see as the gaps?
Thank you for this opportunity. First of all, I would like to appreciate where we come from as the African culture. We have to look at the norms, you know, the social and cultural context and constructs within which we exist. Trevor, you realize that there's a lot of problems when it comes to even raising your voice within the household that you live in. You understand that a lot of sexual offenses actually start even within the household, with guardians, with people who are very close to the girl child, you know. But then because of how we are socialized, a lot of these young girls cannot voice, you know, their concerns to relative authorities, because first of all, it is embarrassing. You know, it's like you're embarrassing the whole fraternity, the whole family. And then also everybody frowns at you. Even the law enforcement officers that are supposed to take up these cases do not take them seriously, especially when they are coming from the background within the family. So we have good policies, we have good mechanisms. I think implementation is quite a challenge. And the weakest link for me, I think, is law enforcement. Trevor, even a simple act, for example, if you are alighting a matatu, for example, as a woman, and a tout gropes you, you're behind, you know, and you go to report at a police station, you know, they will just laugh at you because they think it's very trivial. They don't think that that is actually sexual harassment, that it's a sexual offense. So the way we do our things then needs to change. We need to sensitize and make aware of these issues, that this is what entails sexual harassment, and these are the procedures to follow in case you get yourself in a position in such a manner.
Yeah.
And then you realize that a lot of people who go through sexual offenses are minors who are under guardians. And then these things are swept under the carpet. But then if they're brought to the fore again, most of the people prefer to go through the alternative dispute resolution mechanisms, whereby these elders come with a goat, give the victim's family, and everything is sorted at that manner. So what we need to do is harmonize systems from the core, from how we are socialized, from the chiefs, from the religious people. They need to be sensitized and made aware. The children need to be told that don't feel embarrassed. If there is a sexual offense that has happened to you, you need to report to specific people. The law enforcement officers need to be made aware what the sexual act it talks about. And therefore, we should see people even going to court for serious offenses. But again, Trevor, the biggest impediment again to justice, even for the young girls who are abused, is the process, the chain of custody when it comes even to rape issues. You understand that a lot of people do not understand forensic principles. What do you do, for example, when you have been raped? you know, and what is the chain of custody? What is the law enforcement supposed to do? How do they store and preserve this specimen? By the time this specimen gets to court, it's already been destroyed. And then maybe there's been undue influence. People have come there, they have, you know, bribed their way out. And then, of course, you feel embarrassed throughout and you stop, you know, pursuing those matters. So for me, it's not a policy issue. It is a culture issue. It is who we are. If we can uphold integrity and accountability and hold everybody accountable within their positions, the law enforcement have to do their role.
Yeah.
The guardians have to do their role. And in case whereby there's sexual offenses, then there's laid down mechanisms on what needs to be done.
Yeah.
And if somebody is found to be abetting such kind of crimes, then they have to face the full force of the law.
And sometimes, Wosibori, you raise an interesting point, but sometimes it's the guardians themselves who are the offenders.
For sure.
Yeah.
They are the offenders. And that is why I hope that the government is doing something about safe centers for children who have been abused.
Yeah.
Because a child who's been abused can, of course, be told to shut up and not talk to law enforcement officers. They should be evacuated and taken to safe shelters, and there should be a vibrant and robust witness protection unit.
Yeah.
And the child has to be empowered so that they can come to the fore and to the court and detail exactly what happened. And of course, the government has to protect this child and ensure that now they can continue with their life outside of the guardianship that was now stifling on their rights.
We'll talk about that in just a bit, because now that becomes a very tricky position for a child who's been abused by the guardians. But Cherubia, what do you see as the gaps?
First of all, the retrogressive cultural practices, because coming from pastoralist community, West Pokot and Samburu, and according to the report, teen pregnancies was at 36 as from Pokot. And imagining 36% following Samburu at 50%, you see this retrogressive cultural practice, because FGM becomes the main point of view, because if you are supposed to be circumcised so that you can be married off, because that won't work when you will be married off without circumcision, because men are the heads of the family and they won't allow to marry a girl who is not circumcised. That comes in where the inclusion of the male in this conversation, because male are the head of the family, and if they say no to this retrogressive cultural practices, then our girls will be safe. But you know, the men, they believe in the myths and misconception of FGM, in which they believe that for you to be married off, to become a wife, to get to the roles of, you know, becoming a wife, you must go through FGM. And basically that is not the right way, because FGM has its own consequences. We have stigma, we have in discrimination, we have issues dealing with health, over bleeding, and you know, because in my community I believe that we can make the change. But if you see that you're not supposed to address a community of male just because you're a woman and you're not circumcised, it's not the right way. Talking about again the referral pathways that need to be set. We have weak referral pathways, because going to, for example, I've been circumcised. Going for me to go and, you know, go and report the issues, you'll find that you are there and you're told to wait with the other criminals, wait for long in the queues, and you're told again, basically, that case won't go through because your parents and the pathways that are supposed to help you, they've gone on the other side, and you know, do 1, 2, 3 so that your case cannot go on. And again, going to the justice system, the cases that go through the justice system, you see that cases take long time, and possibly getting the girls to confess becomes an issue, because the girls won't say, they won't say, because it is believed you will say, where are you going back home, because your parents have told you not to say. So basically you want to do it. And again, adding up the accountability levels, we have to be accountable for our girls, because these are tarnishing the future generations. Because if you're not going through those systems and making sure that justice is done to these girls, we are tarnishing their future and will not work to a greater future of Kenya.
Yeah.
And also lack of lack of sexual reproductive health, because coming from West Pokot and those interior places, you get that they're not taught of this thing, menstrual hygiene. You're just told in, I don't know, it's class 6 when you're told about the changes that will happen in your body, but you're not taken through the process and told that these are the issues that will take place in your body, the measures that you will take, because this now contributes to the increasing HIV rates for young people. So I think those are the main gaps that I see.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. And Otto, you're an advocate of the High Court. There's something about the justice system that everyone has mentioned. But what do you see as the gaps? And then you can address the issues around the justice system. Why does it take so long?
Personally, I don't think we have a legislation problem. Our problem is implementation. Because we have the Sexual Offences Act, we have the Protection Against Domestic Violence Act, the Anti-FGM Act, the Anti-Trafficking of People Act. So the acts are there, the legislation is there. Our problem is with implementing the acts. Because you find that all the people involved aware of what they're supposed to do. For example, I'll pick like the Protection Against Domestic Violence Act. As a child, you find that in a household, a child will be molested by a guardian, and then it will be reported maybe to a school. The child may maybe talk to a teacher, and then when that teacher approaches the mother of this child, the mother will say something like, this is a family issue. Now, from there, you know that we're already dealing with a minor who has to be taken care of by guardians. Normally, the first guardians of a child are the parents. And then now this child cannot speak up, and then the parents in this household have refused to do anything about it. So you find, like, for example, as a lawyer, I find myself in a place where okay, a matter comes to court and you're asked to watch brief in this matter, and you do not have any witnesses, you do not have any people to testify, and perhaps now you have to maybe depend on the investigating officer to have conducted proper investigation for the matter, for at least the judge or the magistrate to find conclusive evidence in this matter. And then you'll find none. They clean this child. The medical maybe evidence that does not show anything substantial that can lead to this person, for the judge to find a conclusive conviction for this matter. So sometimes
you can't prosecute because there's no complainant.
Yes.
Okay, no witnesses.
There are no witnesses, and the family is not speaking up at all. In fact, it's like now you are the one who is interfering with their family issues, and they see you as an outsider. Yes.
So in that case, what happens? Do you just let it go because now there's nothing you can do in the legal process?
My hands are tied. What can I what can you probably do when you want to help, but there's no mechanism to help? The people who are supposed to aid in the whole process have refused to. And then the court will say, okay, there was the case was not proved. And then outside here, people will start saying, oh, the courts are not working, they have let this person scot-free. But what was the court supposed to do?
There was no one to complain.
There was no evidence, there was nobody to testify, there was literally no case. Something happened, but where is it?
It's an interesting perspective. We'll talk about that also in the possible solutions. But Kariuki, what do you see as the gaps?
One of the gaps that I'd highlight on is our passive nature as a society. We're very passive in how we address the issues of implementing policies that protect children, that protect young girls, that protect women, that uphold and empower women and young girls in this country. We're very passive in terms of our nature. And specifically when we talk about young girls and their exposure to crime, to sexual assault, sexual violence, abuse of whatever nature in the school, in the home, I would squarely blame an institution called the Social Protection Agency that falls under the Interior, the Ministry of Interior. This is an institution, or this is a department that specifically is in place to ensure that vulnerable members of society, hearing children, the elderly, persons with disabilities, are protected in both the social, economic, and even governance space. So when, for instance, my fellow panelists talk about a child has gone to school, they're reporting, or their teacher finds out that this child has been sexually assaulted, the first person they should be able to call is a social protection officer. How do they know about a social protection officer if there is no awareness about this department called the Social Protection Department? So basically, if the Social Protection Department is in a position to create awareness, to come to a point of convergence, for instance, with the Ministry of Education, with county administration here in county commissioner and chiefs, then it becomes easier for parents, guardians, teachers, and even, let's say, neighbors, people with some level of authority over a child, to report instances of violence or violations of a child's rights. Another impediment is our education system does not necessarily have the requisite affirmative action policies tied within the curriculum itself, that then highlights to children from a very young age that, you know, we have this situation, these are the impediments, these are the hurdles that girls have to go through or have to jump over. So we need to address these issues as from this point to this other point, which again makes it easier for girls from a very young age to understand, you know, these are the hurdles, for boys to understand these are the hurdles that our fellow, you know, children, our sisters, this is what they go through, this is how we support them, and this is how we go forward. Another issue is, especially with like what we're seeing right now, the economic crisis, women tend to be victims, or the numbers of domestic violence tend to go much higher. And you will even notice that femicide tends to spiral around this time. Every time we have an economic crisis, there is a significant proportionality with violence. Yeah, there's a correlation between, yes, exactly, between economic crisis, femicide, sexual and gender-based violence towards women. So that is also another impediment that we also see. And then with that situation and that kind of exposure, and being that women can be very vulnerable, it is easier then for women to get into crime and in certain situations, extremism.
Okay. Interesting views that you raise, and now we'll talk about the possible solutions for all this, because there's quite a number of issues that you raised there. What do we do now from here? And I'd like to hear from you as well at Trevor Mbija at Citizen TV Kenya. Use the hashtag Daybreak. We'll read some of your views in just a bit, but let's take that quick break, then we're back with now the possible solutions to all these issues that we've talked about. All right? See you in a bit.